Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. It's the Monday show sponsored by NordVPN. I'm Andrew Musgrove and he is Aaron Stokes. Newcastle United back to winning ways thanks to a 3-1 win over Southampton down on the south coast. A brace from Alexander Isak and a goal from Sandro Tonali secured the victory for Eddie Howe's side. Wasn't all routine though, especially to begin with. We're here to assess it all. But first, some changes, some new theme music, new titles. I hope you enjoyed it. And also, the studio behind us finally looking like a studio.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, hasn't it? But yeah, it's starting to look good, isn't it? We're nearly there.
You haven't lifted a finger, sorry, shall I say, to build any of this.
I've had the creative input though, haven't I? You've done the manual labour.
All right,
it's been a team effort.
What
really.
Creative input have you put into this?
Well, I thought, we need to get some merch, we need to get some photos. I was the ideas man of the piece, wasn't I?
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a fabrication and nowhere near the truth. I've spent all morning building this, hence the reason we're a little bit late to begin with. But it's been worth it. And if you are a budding artist with any Newcastle United artwork that you would like to showcase, we want to give artists the chance to showcase their work to what is a big audience who we do see ourselves. So get in touch at the EIBW podcast at reachplc.com. and would like to showcase your work for a month. We'll then send you back your artwork, but hopefully you'll get a few sales from a few of our listeners and viewers. Right, a lot to get into, Aaron. But first, how important was it with the week that is coming up for Newcastle United that they went down to Southampton and they won the game?
Yeah, big, but I think it was probably more important because of what had happened the week prior rather than what was coming up. I think it was important to bounce back after that really, really poor performance against Bournemouth, but also the fact that they were going to the team that was bottom of the league, the team that's only got 6 points. I think if they'd obviously lost on Saturday, then the feeling going into this week would be pretty terribly, rightly so. But I must admit, this podcast might be a short one because I feel like it was a routine win, job done, no frills, no spills. And despite, maybe a nervous opening 10 or 15 minutes, they got the job done.
It was, in the end, very routine, and Newcastle could have won quite easily by more than 3 goals. Joe Linton and Murphy going close on a couple of occasions. But it was really important, wasn't it? They bounced back from that defeat to Bournemouth because it was a bit of a shock to the system. They certainly came down to earth with a bit of a bang. And I think everyone thought, while on paper this is a game Newcastle United should definitely be winning, the Newcastle United fan in you who's been supporting the club for 30-odd years goes, this is one that you can see them slipping up on. Then going into Fulham, having an average afternoon, and then you're facing Arsenal. Thankfully, that didn't ring true. And it goes back to what I said a few weeks ago, that I think for the large part, Eddie Howe has started to kind of ebb away that negative mindset, and it's a fair mindset, but it's a negative one where you think Newcastle are going to slip up here, Newcastle are going to get beat here, and sometimes they will get beat by a good side like Bournemouth, and on another day they may have drawn at Southampton. That's just football. But I think for the large part, when Newcastle are expected to beat a side because the other side are inferior, under Eddie Howe today, they usually do.
I must admit, certainly the last couple of months, because obviously we know this is a different Newcastle United side, they've got a different manager, there's a different feeling around the club in general. I think I've lost that sort of mantra of Newcastle United are going to throw this away. I don't think they're that club anymore. Going back to that Bournemouth game, did they maybe need a defeat just to restart? They were on such a good run, confidence was high. Maybe they just needed a little jolt to the system. Eddie Howe probably quite wise to give the players some time off last week. A couple of them jetted off across Europe. Bruno, Miggy, the likes. They were back to work at the back end of the week, and whatever they were doing paid off on Saturday. So yeah, really important to get the win. Couple of stats that I want to point out before we go much further. It was the first time Newcastle have won 4 away games on the spin since '96. Alexander Isak is now the first Newcastle player to score in 5 consecutive away games. And my favourite stat of the entire weekend, and it's not Newcastle United related, but because Southampton lost on Saturday and because Liverpool won on Saturday, it now means Southampton cannot win the Premier League title this season.
That is a ridiculous stat. But yeah, a few good stats there to get into. I'm just going to respond to this comment just quickly in the live chat. Neil says, send your artwork to the Chronicle for free, guys, which is not exactly what we were saying. In fact, all this artwork behind us, we paid for ourselves. So we're not wanting your work for free. what we're saying is we've got quite a big audience and we'd like to showcase your work for a month. We will then send it back in the post to you, and hopefully that drums up a few sales. From my point of view, Aaron, I think that that's a good opportunity for someone out there.
I think that's a fair thing. We've got some brilliant artwork here, haven't we, behind us that look fantastic. All done by local artists who, as we say, are getting their work out there. But we have obviously paid for these stuff. So
yeah, minus the 2 shirts there, which were kindly donated to us, but the rest of it we have paid for. And if you want to showcase your work, then please do so. And Neil, enjoy your afternoon. Right, the Saints goal. It didn't get off to the best of starts for Newcastle United, although they probably did start the game relatively well. But they were kind of caught out by that goal. 10 minutes in, and a really, really poor goal to concede. Lewis Hall allowing the cross to come in first off, and then Fabian Schär nowhere to be seen to allow Bedjanek to get the goal. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I'm sort of glad you corrected yourself there, because Newcastle actually started really well, and in the first sort of 5 or 10 minutes, they looked like they were going to go and win 4 or 5-0. It looked like it was going to be one of those afternoons. And the Southampton opener was really against the run of play. You've mentioned Lewis Hall there not closing down. You've mentioned Fabian Schär losing his man, getting caught. Dan Burn, I thought, was really weak in the challenge a couple of seconds before that when the ball was on the byline. Just another really poor goal to concede. Had sort of the hallmarks of that one Solanke scored at Tottenham a couple of weeks ago, where he got the wrong side of Botman. Fabian Schär didn't cover himself in glory for it. And then there was a little nervy period afterwards, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, where you thought, okay, Newcastle need to really settle themselves here. And as we're obviously going to touch on, thankfully, in the space of a couple of minutes, the game was flipped on its head because of, who else but the main man,
Mr. Alexander Isak. And yes, Newcastle, of course, did start the game really, really well. But of course, you conceded that early on that no one remembers the 4 or 5 chances you had before you scored. And I have to say, I'm going to get probably the only negative out of the way really early on, and then we'll just continue down this road of positivity.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Do you think you know what I'm going to say? Go on then.
Fabian Schär.
Fabian Schär. Look, I know everyone pretty much loves him, but I just think his time at Newcastle United's come to an end for me. I wouldn't offer him a new deal.
Before we go any further on that, I think before people start jumping at us in the comments and listening online, this isn't just because of Saturday, is it?
No,
for you? You've had this
months.
really sort of long-held feeling about Fabian Schär since the start of the season, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's not like a vendetta or anything.
Yeah,
it's just watching him and thinking there's mistakes creeping into his game. Basic mistakes,
which we saw for the disallowed goal.
Exactly, and for the first goal and the only goal Southampton scored, better teams will punish you. And he got lucky with the goal that was ruled out for offside, and he got lucky that Newcastle came back into the game and won it. And we're talking about Newcastle being in the market for a new centre back. They thought they had the Manchester City centre back, which we mentioned last week on last week's Monday show. They thought that they had that all done and dusted. I just think if they can somehow find the right man and the money this month,
okay,
I would say bring him in, and you're not then looking for a successor for Schär in the summer. You've got him. I just think,
but that's my question. Do you think they can't go between now and the end of the season with Schär, Botman, Burn, and Kelly as the 4?
I think they will do.
But can they?
Can
they afford to?
They can, but I think that's it. They're done. I think the summer you go out and you spend the money on that right side of the centre back, and he's not coming in to one day replace Fabian Schär. He's coming in to replace.
I think it's fairly obvious. Newcastle United will do that business in the summer, if not this month. I mean, I would be really, really shocked if they did do anything like that this month. But we saw last summer with Mark Gay, we saw them looking at Europe and the sort of European markets for it. We saw obviously with Kuzanov, who, as you say, has gone to Manchester City. They're clearly in the market for it. Kuzanov's agent came out just last week, didn't he, and said Newcastle United, wanted to wait until the summer. Manchester City came in. It was an offer too good to refuse. So the signs are there. Last summer, this month, they are looking for a younger model who can come in and, be Sven Botman's long-term partner.
Indeed. So once watcher, let us know in the comments what you would like to see happen with Fabian Schär. Would you keep him on at the club? Would you keep him on the club as a first choice as centre-back, or would you just let him go into the sunset? Real test of character for Newcastle United then after conceding that early goal, especially having watched them collapse against Bournemouth relatively early on. And Eddie Howe also mentioned in his post-match comments that it was a real test of character. so important that they came through that.
Yeah, really, really important. Good that they settled the nerves so early. Good that they, didn't let that rot set in after going a goal down. And good that, as we've talked about, they needed a big response, didn't they, from Bournemouth, and that's what they got. Now, I don't know. I was a little bit sceptical after the Bournemouth game when Eddie Howe used the sort of fatigue excuse, but I think you could tell on Saturday they look so much more energised than they did a week prior. And as I mentioned before, maybe they just need a little shot in the arm after such a lengthy run where maybe a little bit of complacency can creep in. And they got that, in as we said, pretty routine fashion.
Well, we said, didn't we, on last week's winner show, the response is key here. You will lose games in the Premier League, especially against good sides like Bournemouth. I mean, they've made light work of Nottingham Forest.
Well, that makes you feel a bit better about the Saturday prior, doesn't it? That they've gone to one of the most informed teams in the league with so many injuries and played them off the park.
Exactly. So it was all about the response and how Newcastle United bounced back. And they did do, and they have done, and it was wonderful to see. They went and got the penalty. It's just great play between Bruno and Isak, and it's just the touch. And this game really was all about Isak's touch. The amount of times you're sitting there and you're watching, you're going, wow, what a first touch this lad has got. And he brings it down into the box, and it's Aribo brings him down, and Isak does the rest from the spot. Absolutely clinical.
Penalty for you?
Oh, Stonewall.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's all because of the way Isak has the ball and kind of brings the defender into him with that first touch. That first touch is absolutely key.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I think the way he held his line was absolutely brilliantly, because he was actually offside, wasn't he, before the ball got played through. When he comes back on side, checks his run. I'll be totally honest. In real time, I thought it was a penalty, and then I saw the first replay, and I thought, "Oh, Newcastle might have gotten away one here." And then I've seen another one afterwards, and thought, "No, it was the right decision." I've seen quite a few Southampton fans unhappy with it, but I think that's a penalty.
Definitely penalty, and I love the pass as well from Bruno for that. And this is the thing, like, you watch it, and he's hit it with some pace, and yet Isak just controls it like it's a bit of candy floss. I don't know what else analogy I could use
I
there.
don't think I've ever used that to describe as a touch.
It's not a football being blasted in, but yeah, wonderful finish from him. And Alan Shearer very praiseful about his penalty technique as well.
Yeah, the little giving the keeper the eye, send him the wrong way. Interesting now, isn't it, that he's the second highest scorer in the Premier League for Newcastle.
He's stealing all my Isak stats.
Sorry, I'm reeling them off. I've got them all written down. What's it now? 100 behind Shearer in Newcastle.
Shearer, 48 he's got in the Premier League, and he's gone ahead of Beardsley and Callum Wilson. Brilliant company,
will he catch it?
Will he catch? I mean, if he stays for the next 3 to 4 years,
as Shearer says, if he signs that 9.5 year deal,
exactly,
a la Haaland, then I think he's got a good shot.
On this form, yeah, he could do. They nearly got a second really, really quickly. Again, wonderful work by Bruno and Isak. A cheeky little back heel, and Isak just puts it right at the keeper either side, and it's in. That partnership, we've talked a lot about how Murphy and Isak are working well together, and we throw praise on Sandro Tonali and the midfield three in general as a trio partnership. But the Bruno and Isak partnership is just flourishing. Like, they just seem to be on the same page. And it's great that it must be great for Isak to know that you've got one man on the right who can pick you out with his eyes closed, and then you've got Bruno in the middle who can do it as well.
And this is another thing that, as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, this whole midfield change with Tonali sitting deeper, what it has allowed Bruno Guimaraes to do is simply dictate the play higher up the pitch. He's getting in more attacking positions. He's getting more assists. He's impacting the game at the right end of the pitch rather than sitting deep and having to sort of, marshal in front of the defence. He said years ago in an interview, Bruno Guimaraes, after he signed for Newcastle, that the number 8 was his favourite position. And I think now we're seeing why he says that, because he just looks to be really relishing in that free role. I mean, I'll admit, I didn't think Saturday was actually his best game by his usual standards, by his recent standards. But still, as you say, some of those passes to Isak and out wide to Murphy and bringing Gordon into the game were really good. And that is because he's playing in this new role.
I think he looks happier in this role. I think he looks freer. He hasn't got those kind of restraints on that Sandro Tonali has got, but it doesn't seem like he's got, because he's got the engine to get back. And maybe that's one thing that Bruno maybe lacked. He didn't maybe have the tactical know-how of how to be a success in that deep lying role while also doing what he's really good at, i.e. getting forward and being the creator. Well, and now he's free in the Premier League. We just don't know what's hit him.
I mean, not to jump ahead of what's going to be on our schedule for this podcast, but Sandro Tonali's goal, that starts from Sandro Tonali winning the ball back in the number 6 position, and he finishes it 5 seconds later. in the number 9 position. You know, that is what he brings to that role.
I haven't seen an engine on a player since probably Gary Speed. That's who he reminds us in terms of the engine he's got. He's just a joy to watch, and he just never looks tired.
Yeah, there's a quote that came out from the Italy manager earlier this season, which I haven't been able to stop thinking about whenever I write about Sandro Tonali, and that was it. His engine is still roaring when he drives it back into the garage. And that is essentially him saying he can play 90 minutes and he can finish a game and he can go again. And we're starting to see that now. And again, you know, how much did we hear at the start of the season? Like we did with Lewis Hall last term, you need to play Tonali, you need to play Tonali. Actually, he's been slowly, patiently allowed to, you know, build his fitness up. And now, I mean, what an engine.
Has Eddie Howe been proved right?
He has, but also you look at the upturn of results recently, and you think, well, you know, if you just put Sandro Tonali in that team a couple of weeks earlier, would we be talking about Newcastle being firmly in the title hunt behind Liverpool? Look, we'll never know. But I always remember Sandro Tonali having that unbelievable game in the cup and then being out of the team a couple of days later. Now Eddie Howe put that down to fatigue again, but look, I don't know. He's been proved right now, but we've all been calling for it for months, haven't we?
What do you think it does for the confidence of the midfield and the likes of Bruno, the likes of Jacob Murphy, who know that if they put the ball in the box, they've got a man who more likely than not is going to put it in the back of the net?
Oh, well, I mean, just to talk about Murphy specifically, it must be an absolute dream because, you know, the biggest positive we give Murphy on this podcast pretty much every week at the minute is how direct he is, how he will just get the ball out of his feet and put a lovely ball in the box. He's really dangerous from those wide positions. And, you know, the proof's in the pudding now. He's assisted Alexander Isak, 7 times in the Premier League this season? Sorry if I've just stolen another stat off you.
Fine, I can expect it.
Yeah, so look, the combination's fantastic. Isak is making Murphy a better player because they've got such a good combination. They're playing really well when they're close together. They sort of have this telepathic connection, don't they, where Murphy knows where Isak's going to be. And look, we've spoken for months, if not years, on this podcast about Newcastle needing a right winger. Jacob Murphy continues week in, week out to, you know, really, really make his mark in that position.
Indeed, we've got to kind of phrase in, but Gary's top speed was a scorer in comparison. I'm not comparing the speeds, I'm comparing the stamina. Tonali is incredible, says Roger Cook. A lot of praise for Tonali in the comments. Isak gets his second of the game. And it's a really nice goal again, isn't it? Murphy picks the ball up, darts down the middle into Isak. The first touch again, absolutely.
If we want to talk about touches, we're talking about the second goal. I mean, that is just unbelievable.
Do you think as well there's a difference in Isak we're seeing today? Because I feel like at the beginning of the season, probably a few games after he returned from injury as well, he's missing that one-on-one. It's going wide. It's going into the keeper. He just seems like a different player these days.
People will generally disagree with me here, and people will think I'm lying or misremembering things because of how well he's been playing the last 2 months. But there was a lot of talk in October and November about him not being right. He didn't look right. He didn't look fit enough. He was. You know, people were talking about his head being elsewhere, and it's only really since November that he's actually started scoring in this ridiculous run. Look, I don't know. I still think if you've got one negative to pick out about Alexander Isak, it is just sometimes those one-on-ones. But, you know, Saturday was just him at his best. Fantastic finish. Really Thierry Henry-esque, the way he opens his body up, sends the keeper the wrong way. I don't know. Look, you've just got to hope that he signs his extension. He goes on to try and beat Shearer's record, because I don't see anybody in world football like Alexander Isak at the minute.
Yeah, you can replace Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton. It would cost you a lot of money, but you can replace them. They're brilliant players, key to how Newcastle United play. But you can't really replace Alexander Isak, if at all, because the price tag would be huge, but there's just no one like him. Like, his all-round gameplay is just absolutely superior. I love the way he drops deep and starts creating the move, and then
goes wide,
yeah,
and runs the channels and runs off the
everything
ball.
About him is unbelievable. And look, there's reports that he will, or Newcastle will offer him a new deal once the season is done and dusted, which for me makes sense, because you've also got to think with the battle against PSR, they've given Anthony Gordon a pay rise and a new deal. That's going to add to it. And also, they're already very nervous, hence the reason we're not seeing them probably going to replace Miguel Almiron when he goes back to the MLS. Obviously, once the season ends, you get into July, it's a new set of accounts. Was it 73 million falling off the page? You've you can kind of start again, for want of a better phrase. So that makes sense for me to offer him a new deal in the summer. But again, they're in a good position, especially to get Champions League. It's not like they're going to lose him on the cheap either. And he's not pushing to go. Join his football, getting European football for the next season will be absolutely key. But I think he stays.
That's the key point, isn't it? They have to get Champions League football, not just because of what the fans want and how well it would do financially. You need to keep those best players by offering them the best competitions to play in. Now, we know Newcastle tried last summer to try and get Isak to extend his deal, which obviously runs till 2028. There's no rush to do it. And talks didn't get very far. And I think, Newcastle really need to get back in the top four to make sure that they keep this man tied down.
Doug says service was poor for Isak, but he was missing opportunities in the one-on-one situations. Even recently, he's missed a couple, but who is complaining? Purple patch for sure. Now, I wasn't going to talk about it, but I feel like we have to talk about it. We're not going to name the gentleman in question, but a lot of anger over the weekend about a certain broadcast station and their reaction to Isak scoring one of these goals. I'm not entirely sure which one it was. I think it was the second one maybe. But anyway, and again, there's this kind of feeling there's an Arsenal agenda. Even Piers Morgan afterwards saying, we need him. And I was about to quote tweet him saying you can't afford him. But I thought I'd get
You can't give Piers Morgan a quote tweet. That's
well, I thought I'd
draw the line.
I thought I'd get a ton of abuse anyway off some Newcastle fans saying, it doesn't matter even if they could afford him, he's not going anywhere. I don't think he is going anywhere.
This is the point that frustrates me because, everybody's acting for me as if PSR doesn't exist for Arsenal. How are Arsenal really going to afford a £150 million player? They can't do it. And if they do, they're going to have to sell the bulk of their first team. That's what really frustrates me. On the incident in question, not that we want to mention that what happened and by person because he's been getting a lot of abuse,
which is uncalled for. But
is this? I was thinking the other day, just to play devil's advocate, as I like to do on this podcast, is this not just what me and you do on a podcast every week, where you say, "I would love to see Matthias Cunha at Newcastle"? Is that not the same as what?
Well, when I was speaking to the Bournemouth chap, doing the view from the opposition, I did say, "Look, I want Semenyo at Newcastle," and I feel really bad about doing it.
We for months we've said, how good would it be if Brian Mbeumo signs for Newcastle? And there's going to be Brentford fans out there going, "Well, hang on, you can't just cherry pick best players." Now the difference is, and it's a difference that we need to point out. No disrespect to Bournemouth or to Brentford or to Wolves, Cunha, Semenyo, and Mbeumo joining Newcastle would be a step up. Newcastle to Arsenal at the minute is not that big of a step. There is every chance this season that Newcastle knock Arsenal out of the Carabao Cup and potentially finish above them. So that's what angers me the most about it, is that everyone's acting as if it's Arsenal's God-given right to come and take Newcastle's player. If I'm completely honest, looking at their two squads, I don't think many would choose Arsenal over Newcastle at the minute anyway.
Not right now. With Saka injured, they look at half the team that they usually are. And I tell you what, if Arteta, I hope he doesn't overturn Newcastle's 2-0 lead. I think he could be in bother in the summer.
Yeah, well, what he's in was 5th or 6th year, and he's won an FA Cup and 2 Community Shields. It's they need a trophy, don't they? They really do.
They certainly do. And fingers crossed it isn't the League Cup, because that's got Newcastle's name written all over it. But yeah, wonderful finish from Alexander Isak, and as Aaron mentioned there, now Newcastle's second all-time Premier League goal scorer, 100 off Alan Shearer, and only the only Newcastle United player to have ever scored in 5 consecutive away games. The man is breaking history every single week. And what I loved about the end of the first half hour is that they smelled blood and they were going for it. They were not taking their foot off the accelerator. They were really, really gunning for Southampton. Joe Linton hit the post, but he was offside. We mentioned, obviously, a couple of other chances, but that's like the clinical Newcastle, isn't it? You can only beat what's out in front of you. We put off the caveat, the performance and results in. It's an awful Southampton side. It's probably the worst Premier League side we'll ever see. But really impressive that Newcastle United went, you know what, we've still got a job to do here, and they were going for it.
Yeah, they were. I'll be totally honest. I was a tiny little bit nervous when Newcastle went 1-0 down, because they looked like they were struggling to settle. As soon as it went 2-1, I'll be totally honest, I don't think I felt a single shred of nerves for the entire game. I thought, that's it, they're going to get the job done. They were really front foot, really putting their foot to the floor, trying to get that third goal, which they did. And again, as we touched on it at the start of the episode, it just felt like a routine win in the end, which is what you want from these games against the teams at the bottom.
Graham says the issue was that the reporter mentioned Arsenal to describe Isak's second goal, so it's not the same. So I can't understand the fury on that sort of that side of things. Got Passion on the Tynes saying, what do you know of Newcastle's PSR position? Do you know if funds are there to spend this window? Well, if you go back a few episodes, we did a special episode with our finance football expert, David Powell, who did his best to try and explain Newcastle's accounts. And the updated accounts will come out hopefully at the end of this month. But he did his best to explain how the PSR restrictions are affecting Newcastle United. Lots of great feedback on that. Hopefully it helped some of you guys understand a bit more, because it certainly did me. I mean, Newcastle United, I think, have got limited funds to spend this January, but I think the problem is it's not going to get you anything really. I think that's why the whole the Man City defender from the French league, Kushnoff, I think the release clause was about £20 million, and I think that's probably the upper limit that they've got, and they probably don't want to spend that unless it's someone with huge potential that they have to go out and get now, or game changer. But the market just isn't going to allow you to have that. So I think there's a little bit of funds there, but I can't see them spending it even with the Miggy money, because even if you've got 30, 40 million, really, for someone to come in and take a spot in this first starting 11, who's that going to get you?
Yeah, the word coming out of Newcastle, and it's been pretty consistent for the last month to 6 weeks, is that they don't think they're going to do any incomings, and that's regardless of Miguel Almiron going or not, which obviously isn't what fans to hear. We obviously talked last week on this very episode, on this very pod, didn't we, and said it's unthinkable for them to not replace Miggy, but they don't want to be left in that situation that they were last summer, where they had to sell players at the last minute. We know that if they had went and signed Mark Gay in the summer, they would have had to sell. They would have had to have a really big sale or two to make that deal work. I think as we stand here with a week today till the deadline, I think unless Miguel Almiron, Lloyd Kelly, and potentially Odysseus Vlachodimos go, I would be surprised if Newcastle did anything. I think it would take them three really to actually say, right, we need to bring someone in.
Does that make you uncomfortable on the right? Because obviously Harvey Barnes is injured. We don't know when he's back. The options on the flanks aren't what they used to be. And we saw, on Saturday, and I'm not saying for a moment you keep Miguel Almiron, because I think £8 million plus 3 add-ons is actually a really good deal for him. But we saw he still carries a little bit of a threat, and it would have been perfect if he'd scored that chance at the end when it would have been the Hollywood dream ending. But he goes, and the options are limited. Jacob Murphy picks up an injury. What are you doing then?
As it stands at this moment in time, if Miguel Almiron was to go today or tomorrow, then it is the fit options that Newcastle United have up front are Jacob Murphy, Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, and William Masula. They've got no Harvey Barnes. They've got no Callum Wilson. Trayvon Sanusi isn't deemed, up to the standard of Premier League football yet. Understandably, he's only a young'un. They're too short, but from a business point of view, I get why they want to keep the powder dry. But as you say, one injury to Isak, one injury to Murphy, to Gordon, and they are in a world of trouble.
Well, fingers crossed we have a bit of luck with injuries, because we've deserved it. Eddie Howe has earned it, and hopefully everyone can stay fit. Jumping in the comments there, Current Phrase says, a loan to buy on the right to cover Miggy is the key for me. Give me a name.
James McAtee.
Someone's in for him now, though, aren't they? Leverkusen.
Yeah.
So there are people out there you can look at. Evan Ferguson is obviously not a winger, but he's another person you could bring in to cover Isak.
Yeah, it's weird. Newcastle have been very reluctant to do these type of deals ever since Lewis Hall, really, which proved to be such a shrewd signing, because they got him for $4 million for a year, and then obviously the $24 million went on the following year's finance sheet. They did a similar deal with Matt Targett the year before under Dan Ashworth. Eddie Howe was sort of asked about the loan market last week, and essentially said what he said this time last year, what he says every time he's asked about it. They don't think they've got any friends that are going to do them any favours. And you can understand that, being that they're challenging Champions League football.
Do you sit here and get a little bit angry at the fact that we've seen Manchester City able to splash the best part of £150 million in the last week, and they're joint on points with Newcastle United? And obviously those three, Pep Guardiola will hope will make the difference to get them as close to Liverpool as possible. Whereas Newcastle United look like they'll not be able to bring anyone in this January.
Yeah, I mean, just on Manchester City, I think, people will probably look at it from the outside and think, how can they spend so much money? I think when Manchester City are making £720 million a season in revenue, they're never going to ever be in a position to be, stretched financially. What I find frustrating is, and not to go over old ground, but this is now going to be the third window. Newcastle United haven't been able to strengthen their first team. They're not in debt. They don't owe any money to their owners. They're sustainable. They're profitable. They're increasing their revenue streams. And as we say, they haven't strengthened in 3 seasons. That, to me, smacks that the rules aren't fit for purpose.
Do you think Newcastle have been overly cautious when it comes to PSR? I mean, they wouldn't be this cautious without good reason, right?
They were so stung last year, and they had a 48-hour period which they hated so much in selling Anderson and Minter at the 11th hour. Darren Eales has even came out on the record and said, we will not leave ourselves in that position again. And they know if they spend more than they can account for this year, it is going to mean another panic sale in the summer. And as we've talked about loads on this pod, who do they sell for big money? You're not going to get too much for Sean Longstaff if he goes. You're probably not going to get too much as it stands for someone like Lloyd Kelly or Joe Willock. Then you're talking about, one of the big boys, and they don't want to lose them.
And it's hard as well to sell them, because they've not been playing, and when they have been playing, they've not been playing very well. How would you persuade someone to splash 20-25 million on Joe Willock?
But also, that is a good point. Joe Willock's value at the minute is going in one direction, and it's not going up because he's not playing, and he's not playing well when he gets the chance. But also, look around the Premier League this month. Liverpool not spending, Manchester United not spending, Chelsea very, very limited spending. Villa have brought in Marlon, but they've had to get rid of Philogene to do it. Manchester City really are the only big team spending any money, and that just goes to show what this market's been like.
We've got Conor Frere saying Tyler Diblin, I think he will end up going in the summer for about 55-60 million pounds, and Newcastle will not be the only ones chasing his signature. We've got Niall saying Harvey Barnes. I'm guessing, and he hasn't quite followed up, but I'm assuming you mean could be cashing on Harvey Barnes. We've got Michael saying Anthony Elanga for me to replace Miguel Almiron. Well, he's again going to cost you the best part of 50-60 million. And he was my first choice in the summer, but actually this season, having seen someone like Semenyo, I don't even think there's a comparison there.
This is the thing that we're talking about. Elanga and Semenyo and Burma and all these players, they're all probably going to cost you north of £50 million, at least, I think, at the minute.
So do you go abroad? As in someone's said here, Gary says, I'm gathering from the Mitchell meeting with the scouting team going forward, it will be young talent players we will be buying that we can coach and increase value.
Yeah, I think they will go abroad in the summer. I think they've seen it work, obviously, in the previous regimes with Bruno and Botman and Isak. And I just think the tax that is put on some Premier League players at the minute is just crazy.
Niall says, I think we have to keep away from the Premier League. I mentioned this in tomorrow's episode with Sam Mullen as we talk about the big talking points of the weekend. I honestly, if I was Newcastle United now with a limited budget, I would be in for Morgan Whittaker, because even if he doesn't have a brilliant 6 months at Newcastle United, you can probably still sell him in the summer for a profit. I just think when the money isn't really there to bring in someone who's instantly going to be an upgrade, bring someone in to at least compete. And he has a great pedigree. He's been hit by injury, but for £5 to £10 million or whatever it is, even if it's £10 million down payment, I think that's a gamble Newcastle can take, and you would definitely be able to make a profit when you do come to sell him.
Well, I was really surprised nobody was in for him in the summer, because he had such a good season last season with Plymouth, who were pretty average. I thought the studio was collapsing. I saw you if anybody heard that. Yeah, he had a really good season last season, really good numbers in a poor playing side. That's continued this year. Is it Middlesbrough he's going to?
Middlesbrough, Burnley.
Burnley. Yeah, interesting one, isn't it?
There's plenty of championship talent that you can.
Roman Esse, player that Newcastle have watched, left Millwall, went to Palace, scored on his debut. He looks a real young talent. So yeah, there's definitely options in the champ.
Let us know any names that you would like to see Newcastle United look at potentially this January or indeed in the summer. Before Newcastle United got the third, we had a fantastic save from Martin Dubravka. He flapped the cross and then recovered brilliantly to tip over overhead kick. A really, really important save at an important moment in the match.
Yeah, really good save. Really good overhead kick, wasn't it, from Harwood Bellis? Would have been a fantastic goal. Great save. And, I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 90 seconds later when Newcastle were at the other end scoring. So it was a big save at a crucial moment. Didn't have too much to do Saturday, I thought. Dubravka, it was a quiet game from
Even more impressive, isn't it? That
Yeah,
you can be
he
switched
switched
on.
on.
Like, that's a sign of a good goalkeeper. And Nick Pope back on the bench. It's going to be interesting to see what happens from here on.
What do you think happens? Who do you think he goes with?
I think Nick Pope. You see, I think Nick Pope probably comes back in, but I think the way he's dealt with Dan Burn is maybe a little bit of an insight, and he might actually change his ways. If you just ask me straight off, I would say Eddie Howe brings Nick Pope back in for Fulham, but I don't see how you can drop Martin Dubravka in good form.
I'm going to go the opposite, and I completely get your logic, because this is Eddie Howe we're talking about. He's done it before, hasn't he, where he's brought Pope straight back in. I think it's different this time around. I think he sticks with Dubravka.
And for the League Cup semi-final as well?
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, because the back line is working so well. Okay, she had a few wobbles. Dan Burn has looked tired, maybe against Bournemouth, for example. But for the large part, those four with Dubravka being the fifth, they look really solid together. And do you really go and rip up a solid defence?
Exactly. When Dubravka came into the team this time last year, he was pretty abject. He was pretty awful. Newcastle were losing games. It was an obvious choice to bring Pope back in. I think now, and just to get sentimental about it for a minute, if you're Martin Dubravka, you've had an offer that you want to accept and go and play in Saudi and get a big pay packet, and Eddie Howe has pleaded with you to stay, and you've stayed, and then before the transfer window was even closed, you're back out the team, I would be fuming. Now, look, I know that that's me, as I say, being sentimental about it. You can't run a football club on that alone, but, you know, Eddie Howe has fought tooth and nail to keep Martin Dubravka at the club this month because of how well he's been playing, and I think he should stay in.
Do you think Martin Dubravka will have gone for some reassurance that even with Nick Pope back and fighting fit, it's a fair and balanced fight for the number one spot?
Yeah, I would hope so, and I think so. And I think, look, would he have even needed to say it? I think Eddie Howe knows, this time around it's been different. Martin Dubravka has made the collective team look better. Not only has he been better than he was this time last year, the team are playing better, the results look better. They look more composed at the back. They're starting attacks from the back. I'll be a little bit disappointed if Nick Pope comes back in for Fulham, as you say.
Also, it's a big game against Arsenal, isn't it? Do you really bring in
Nick Pope in from the cold?
Yeah.
Not match fit.
But then if he's against Kai Havertz, I mean, be all right, won't he? Hey. Oh, God, I've jinxed it now.
Yeah.
The kind of phrase says, not until Pope is 100% will he get back in my opinion. He clearly had shoulder issues when he was playing before. The leg injury. Tony says Pope to me is an issue. The new possession-oriented style needs a goalkeeper who is good with his feet. And Andrew says keep Dubs, new contract, and let go of Pope and bring in Trafford. So plenty of debate there on the goalkeeper situation. As I mentioned last week, I've been told that Ramsdale is definitely on the radar. Didn't feature, of course, against Newcastle on Saturday because of injury. Someone did ask me over the weekend whether there was anything more than that. I was like, he's injured. But would that be an upgrade on Pope?
Just me personally, I've never really got the appeal of Aaron Ramsdale. There's just something about him. I don't think he's reliable enough. And I think if Newcastle United really want to go at the top, I don't know if Aaron Ramsdale is the goalkeeper to do that. And if I'm totally honest, again, we talk about that Premier League tax. How much is he going to cost? Even if Southampton go down, I'm not sure.
Niall says Dubravka will go to the end of the season, and then we get two new goalkeepers and sell Pope as part of the Trafford deal. There you go.
He's playing his own version of Football Manager there, but it makes sense.
And Gary says, please not Ramsdale. I think he's always got a big mistake in him. Trafford in for me. It's interesting there. I'll be intrigued to know the likes of Gary and Niall there mentioning James Trafford. Where were you sitting regarding Trafford in the summer? Because he got a lot of stick to Trafford when Eddie Howe was determined to bring him in. And hey, if they brought him in the summer, it would have cost them probably 15, 20 million pounds less than it's going to cost them now.
Yeah, I wrote about this last week. Interestingly, Newcastle wanted him in the summer. 20 million was the price. He had come off the back of an absolutely dismal season with Burnley. He'd been dropped out the team for Muric, who's now at Ipswich. Burnley obviously went down in the company. They got rid of pretty much their entire first team when Scott Parker came in. But Parker said, no, the player that I want to keep is James Trafford. Newcastle fans were happy because they thought he's not good enough. I mean, I think he's proven this season with that record. 9 goals conceded in 27 games for Burnley this season. It's a remarkable stat. Good with the ball at his feet, confident. He's a perfect Eddie Howe type of player. He's young. He's for the future. England credentials. He will be a future England goalkeeper after being in and around the squad. He knows the likes of Anthony Gordon and Nick Pope. Ticks a lot of boxes for me. I wouldn't be against signing James Trafford at all.
Yeah, the more I've watched him this season, the more I've kind of come on board with it. I wasn't too convinced.
He's got a mistake in him with the ball at his feet, but he's brave. He'll take risks. I think he would be a good addition.
Right, Newcastle United's third, Sandro Tonali. It's a long ball by Cher. It's cleared. Tonali heads it down to Isak, chests it over to Gordon. Tonali continues that run. Brilliant pass from Anthony Gordon. Wonderful finish from Sandro Tonali. For me, it's one of my favourite Newcastle United goals this season.
Yeah, it had everything. That in a nutshell, in a 5 or 10 second clip, does everything you get from Sandro Tonali, isn't it? Energy, determination to win the ball. He spots the run. He makes the run. Brilliant finish. He is just playing so well.
What was the celebration about? 8 fingers in it?
Yeah, 7 fingers. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Anyone know?
Yeah, I've saw a lot of people trying to work that out on Twitter. I'm not sure. It was 4 on one, 3 on the other. So I don't know. Was it his brother's 43rd birthday, 34th birthday? I don't know. I'm not sure.
But another player looks so happy.
Yeah, look, he does. And speaking of him being happy, obviously a lot of speculation a couple of weeks ago about potential moves to Italy. We all knew that was rubbish. A really good quote that I saw just now ago. I've just put it out on our Instagram. Tonali said after the game, we work together, we live together, we stay every day together on the training ground. We know last season was difficult for every player, but now, after a great reaction, every player loves playing for Newcastle United, playing for these amazing fans, and playing for this amazing team. He sounds like a player who's very, very settled, which is good. And I'm going to put it out there. You know how we like to do our predictions for the season at the start of every season? I'm going to do a prediction for the next couple of years. Future Newcastle United captain.
Someone has said that in the comments, actually.
It's nailed on.
Leadership qualities.
100%. I hate to say it. I don't know if this is on the schedule to talk about Bruno later in this episode, but I look at those two and I think he is arguably now a better captaincy choice than Bruno Guimaraes.
That's a big decision, that though, isn't it?
Oh, look, I'm not saying it's going to happen. Bruno's not going to lose captaincy, but I just look at him and I think he embodies everything you want from a leader.
And he says in his interview, he said it was a player from Milan, number 7, and he said he was waiting for him to give the same celebration back. Not sure of the player. There was a moment in the game, I think it was after Newcastle United scored. What was it? There was a moment in the game anyway, and everyone is totally distracted, and the camera kind of pans to the group of players, and all you can see is Tonali like in the edge of the frame, just like reorganizing and like kind of get everyone back. And it's that kind of leadership in the middle, like always switched on to the next bit of danger that just sets them apart.
Yeah, and also his awareness on the pitch. You know, when he doesn't have the ball, he is just so switched on to the danger around him. That's why he's been perfect in that role where he's had to mop up in front of the defence. As we touched on in this episode, the engine on him is just remarkable. He can play a full 90 and he looks like he hasn't broken a sweat. He's proven, worth every penny, isn't he?
And Newcastle then pushed for even more. And that was so refreshing to see, is that they just did not stop. I mean, it was embarrassing by the end. Southampton looked like the team that they are. They're hurtling towards the championship. They're pretty much down already. It
almost got back into it.
They did.
I know we said we weren't going to go back on it and talk about it again, but
they did, and it would have been a nervous end. But also, I mean, Newcastle were really lucky not to get it 4th or 5th, and they just wanted it. Like they just wanted to keep on playing it and keep on adding to their tally, and they were really unfortunate that they didn't.
Yeah, they had a couple of chances towards the end. Was it Murphy who at the base of the post?
Joe Linton had one cleared.
Yeah, Joe Linton off the line, which would have been a really good end to a really sweet move. Yeah, look, it was a fantastic performance. Even when they went 3-0 up, as we touched on, they didn't take the foot off the gas. It's exactly what you wanted. And as for that Southampton team, I feel for Ivan Juric because he's came in. He hasn't done a very good job so far, but you can tell he's really, really trying to get something out of this team. But they're beyond help. I think they're going to go down with close to the record low points. They're awful.
I mean, how much do we have to caveat by saying Newcastle were good, but Southampton were pretty dire.
No, look. I think it was a little bit of both. I think Newcastle were impressive. I thought they created a lot of big chances, even the ones that they didn't actually end up taking. I thought it was a good, assured performance. They weathered a nice early storm. They kept it until the end, apart from that one share mistake. I don't think it was Southampton bad. I think it was Newcastle being good.
Full time whistle goes, and then the players head over to the away fans, and Eddie Howe pushes Miguel Almiron out of the group towards the away fans as they're serenading him. Absolutely wonderful to see. Really touching moment from Eddie Howe, and Miguel Almiron deserves that. And look, the stick that I have seen that poor lad getting over the last week has been nothing short of disgraceful.
The last week?
I mean, okay, yes, it's been
the last week.
It's been particularly bad over the last week, I think. Really, good riddance. He should have gone ages ago. Look, yes, okay, Newcastle United probably should have cashed in or tried to when he had that purple patch. But don't forget that without Miguel Almiron, Newcastle United would not have qualified for the Champions League. And he also scored some important goals in that campaign as well. Obviously scored against PSG. He deserves our well wishes. He deserves praise for his time on Tyneside. Could he have done more? Yes, but then so could have every player. And I actually would argue that Miguel Almiron has done more when it comes to important goals and important moments than some of the wingers who are held up as legends of this club.
I know exactly who you're talking about with that.
Well, you can hear. I don't know.
No, I do get your point. Look, it's been the trendy thing for years to bash Miggy, and look, I get it. I'm not saying that he was immune to criticism. He has frustrated me no end. He has not done enough. His record, 223 appearances, 30 goals. It was not good enough for a Premier League winger. But some of the abuse has bordered on, frankly, just unforgivable. It's been horrendous, and I thought it was really good to see that moment at the end. Even before the full-time whistle went, it was really telling that he came on in the 88th minute, and that chant pretty much lasted 6 or 7 minutes. It was the Miguel Almiron chant for a good 7 minutes before the game ended. I was chuckling myself there when you said Eddie Howe pushed it towards the front, because in vintage Eddie Howe style, 10 minutes later, when the reporters asked him about it, he said, "No, it wasn't a goodbye. It wasn't a goodbye. I was just pushing the front because you don't know what's going to happen. It was a goodbye." Delighted for Miggy personally for him to get that send off, because I think he deserves it. That will have meant a lot to him. Again, I understand there's been frustrating around him, but it was lovely to see. It was brilliant.
He should have scored more goals. 30 goals, as you say, is not enough. But I also think for a large part of his time under Steve Bruce, he wasn't being played in the right position. And it
scored some big goals under Rafa.
And this is the point exactly. The goals he scored have meant more to Newcastle United in terms of either surviving the drop or getting to Europe, whatever, than some of the goals that wingers who are absolutely loved because they were entertaining or they had this flair. But if you want to look at hard cold facts and stats, Miguel Almiron, okay, I'll say it, he's done more than David Ginola at Newcastle United.
Well, we can talk about the stats, and I don't want to come across as one of these, we demand a team that tries, because Newcastle have moved on from that. But he has never shirked responsibility once. He has grafted. He has been the embodiment of that Newcastle side that was fighting relegation under Bruce and Rafa. He was exactly what you wanted. He would run into the ground with you. And I know that doesn't excuse the fact that he never used his right foot, and he didn't score enough goals, and he was wasteful. But, he never, ever, ever once let his head drop, did he? And I think, fans forget about that when they're abusing him on social media. He really did give us all for this club, and that's all we can ask sometimes.
You'll not find a hard working Newcastle United player than Miguel Almiron, and it's not his fault that he is still here at a time when the ability and talent in the squad has just gone up on a massive trajectory. That's not his fault. It's not his fault that he's on a massive contract, and that when teams have come in for him, it's maybe not been the right deal. Why should anyone take a pay cut if he's got 2 years left on his deal? And do you know what? I applaud him for not wanting to go to Saudi and chase the money. I applaud that.
Could have went to Saudi last summer, had enough on the table, said no. And I also think personally, just to talk about a topic we haven't spoke about, I think going back to Atlanta will be good for him because he's loved there. He will be a really, really good addition to that team. Back to a sort of a level that he's probably going to thrive in, back to a club that loves him, back to an environment he knows. I think it's a good move. And as you mentioned there, 11 million in total. It's a good deal for Newcastle.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
it's all profit as well because his book value is now done and dusted.
Yeah.
So that's good. And he says, lovely touch by Eddie, despite him saying it's not a good buy. DLB says, Miggy deserves respect. Really disappointing at the disrespect to him. People are treating Longstaff the same. And he says, best of luck to Miggy. But apart from a purple patch, there was no final product. I'm being brutally honest, a bit of a headless chicken. So frustrating. Lots of energy and always give 110%. And I don't disagree with what Andy said there. I've described him plenty of times as a headless chicken, the way he runs, head down, sometimes looks up right at the end and realizes, oh, there's a defender in front of me. But the point is, as you've mentioned, he gave his all at Newcastle United every time he pulled on that black and white shirt, every single time. And you don't always get that, especially during the dark days as well. He was there fighting for the cause. Big move for him as well when he first came.
Yeah.
Probably couldn't speak the language.
Speak the
Can't really speak the language that well.
He claims not to speak the language. He does, but he just doesn't like giving interviews to us. But
I just think that you said there, you don't want to kind of say the phrase, we demand a team that tries. But I think if you remove away everything, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to wanting someone who gives their all. And Miguel Almiron defines that.
If Miguel Almiron had scored 30 goals in 223 Premier League games, but he would strut around the pitch, walking and not trying and not looking interested, I would be absolutely battering him. Look, I think both things can be true. He was not good enough in large periods. He didn't do it on a consistent basis. He wasn't clinical enough, but also the abuse he got was always too much, and he always grafted. And both of those things can be true. And just to make a point there, as you were saying something.
I was just going to say, the love that Hatton Ben Arthur or Alan St. Maximin getting, I just think, why? Because they had brief moments of brilliance. But when you actually look at it, was it really anything more than what Miguel Almiron actually achieved at Newcastle?
Good point.
I don't think it was. Let us know in the comments. Right, are you going to do some trivia?
Yes, I can.
Are you the man with
trivia? I completely forgot about it, but I can bring it up. Yeah.
Always prepared.
Yeah. As you all know, because you've all been listening the last couple of weeks, we've been doing Newcastle players who have played for both Newcastle and the team that Newcastle have been playing. Obviously, at the weekend it was Southampton. So we have got
in the Premier League
era. And we've got
I know one.
This is going to be hard. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Some of them are going to be easier to get than others. I'm going to put 90 seconds on the clock. I'm going to have to help you out with some of them. But yeah, your time starts now.
Ryan Fraser.
Yeah, 1.
Adam Armstrong.
Yeah.
John Beresford.
Yeah.
That's probably where I've run out of steam, to be honest with
2
you.
current fullbacks for Newcastle United.
2 current fullbacks. Tino Livramento. Yeah. Matty Target.
Yeah. There's 5 down. Another fullback, Newcastle legend, played for Southampton 13 times. I completely did not know this.
Newcastle legend is fullback.
Yeah. Legend, is he? Yeah, he's a legend.
Nah, go on.
He's French. He got knocked out by Olivier Robert.
Olivier Bernard played for Southampton.
Yeah, he did apparently 2004.
I was going to guess that. But
this striker who's on the list next was also on the list last week against Wolves, but neither of us knew he played for Wolves.
Court?
No.
Go on.
2009 to 11.
Marlon Harewood?
No, but you're in the right era.
Nah, go on.
Leon Best.
Played for
Southampton for 2 years in 04-06. One size fits.
What?
Hall? No, that was a joke from me. Fitz Hall played for them in 2003. Newcastle, again, legend, played 110 times for Newcastle, 24 for Southampton. In the 90s, his second name is a meat.
What? Is a meat? Ham?
No.
Sausage?
No.
Go on.
Barry Venison.
And
then you've got a midfielder, centre midfielder, played for Newcastle. Wow, did not only play for Newcastle 92 times. Also played for Liverpool and Bolton, I believe.
Liverpool, Bolton. Dino Hatterman?
No, he played for Newcastle 08 to 11. Played 10 times for Southampton in 2006. Don't think he's not very rememberable.
No, go on.
Danny Guthrie. and we've also got Alan Nielsen. That was a
tough.
hard one. Didn't know Best played for them. Didn't know Guthrie played for them. Didn't know Fitzhall played for them. I would have forgot about Matt Targett. And didn't know Olivier. Didn't know Olivier Bernard.
No, someone said Nolan there, but he didn't play.
No,
Someone's
yeah,
guessed Nolan. Right then, Aaron, what does the final few days of the transfer window hold for Newcastle United? Miguel Almiron is set to leave, as you said there, for £11 million. We think in total. What's next?
As it stands, as we say, we're recording this on the 27th of Jan, so there's a week left. I think potentially some more outgoings. There's been interest in Odysseus Vlachodimos. Depends whether he wants to go. Interestingly, this morning, it looks like Juventus may have moved on from Lloyd Kelly. They've done a deal for Chelsea left-back Renato Vega, and they're also pushing to sign Jean-Claude Todibo from West Ham on loan. That would essentially negate the need to sign Lloyd Kelly. He could potentially stay, which what Eddie Howe wants. And then apart from that, you maybe get a few of the youngsters out. Does Alfie Harrison go out on loan? They're potentially going to wait up a loan deal for Grant Kowal. Remember him? So yeah, very much outgoings on the agenda at the minute. But as Eddie Howe keeps saying, never say never on incomings.
Away from the football, lots of, shall we say, anger regarding Manchester United and the regeneration project down at Old Trafford, which was announced in a statement over the weekend that it has got government backing. I have to say, I think a lot of people maybe haven't read what the statement actually has to say.
This is what I was just about to say. I feel like because you've been very vocal about this in the office this morning, I think you need to maybe fact check what's actually been.
I've a little. You mean fact check for people listening and watching?
Yeah.
Okay,
Not
you. Thought you were going to say I've been the one throwing the government and what have you under the bus. So essentially, all Manchester United want to regenerate the area around Old Trafford as well as build a brand new stadium. And over the weekend, it's been confirmed that it has government backing. Now, the key.
I think I've got it here. If you want to read.
Well, I've got it here. The key point of this announcement is that Manchester United will be funding any new stadium or any rebuild. So the government and taxpayers' money will not be heading into that project. Where the government may offer some financial backing is for the areas around Old Trafford, and that'll be alongside the Greater Manchester Authority, with Andy Burnham, who's the mayor of Greater Manchester. So obviously they'll have a budget and some money may be spent on there. Now, where the government will come in, it's about kind of opening up transport links around this area, which then would allow the regeneration of that area. So, move the freight line and then build, university accommodation or hotels and stuff like that. So that's where it seems like the government backing has come from. Now, on social media, a lot of people have seen this story and taken it, have raised the fact that it looks like the Tyne Bridge might not get the full funding from the government, which isn't confirmed yet, and also the fact that we are one of the poorest regions in the country, if not the poorest region in the country, and it seems like we've been left behind far too often. The reality of the situation is that Man United will pay for any new stadium, any rebuild, and so they should. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the richest man in Britain, or close to being, so he can't go with his cap and begging for money. On the flip side of that, if the government and the Greater Manchester Authority want to spend their funds and it's there, then I can kind of see why would a club turn that down? It's annoying, it's frustrating from someone sitting up here on Tyneside, but I can't see why a club like Manchester United would go, yeah, of course.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the confusion has been around because Radcliffe has spoken on the record, hasn't he, about building a Wembley of the North. And I think people are putting two and two together and thinking that Manchester United are getting this brand new stadium, essentially for nothing really off taxpayers.
Well, a little bit of an exclusive. I hate using that word, but I'm going to say it as an exclusive. I got in touch with the North East Combined Authority, obviously the North East Mayor, Kim McGuinness, and I put the statement to her about what's on offer down or what's potentially going to be offered to Manchester United. And she said, Newcastle United is a huge part of many people's lives in the North East. So I'll just state that what I did, I asked her, would she be chasing similar funding if Newcastle United decided they needed regeneration around either St James's Park or a new site? And she said, Newcastle United is a huge part of many people's lives in the North East, and we know the club is a huge driver for jobs and the regional economy. I will absolutely be working with United's owners on their plans for the future so that together we can use any stadium development to help transform and regenerate the local area. The way we can attract new funding to welcome businesses, build homes and support better transport links in the same way that people in Manchester are starting to talk about with their future plans. So she, Kim McGuinness, the Mayor of Newcastle, or the Mayor of the North East, is not going to, by any stretch of the imagination, turn down similar funding if it was to become available. So you can take that from her, that she's going to be fighting for Newcastle and Newcastle United's cause along a similar route that Andy Burnham is for Manchester United. Thoughts on that?
They just need to get a new stadium built now, don't they? And then they're gonna go cap in hand. No, I think it's very positive. And Kim Moore speaks very, very highly of Newcastle United, doesn't she? You know, you've got a champion there with her mayor role. Yeah, all that's left to be decided now is what Newcastle United do.
Should they stay or should they go? And of course, Kim McGuinness, as I said, is the Mayor of the North East. Well, thank you, ladies and gents, for tuning in. Please hit thumbs up. Please share the pod amongst Newcastle United supporting friends and family. It's been a pleasure, as always. If you're catching up later, do get into the comments and I will get back to you. For myself and Aaron, we'll see you next week for the Monday show.